Hey guys, so I finally got my Eachine E010 and this is the toy quad that's sort of been taking the internet by storm right now. A lot of hype about this, and that's because it's a clone of the Tiny Whoop. This guy right here, and I've flown this quite a bit. It's been pretty beat up and repaired many times, and just looking at these side by side, they obviously did a pretty good job of cloning this. And it's not an exact copy. The dimensions are slightly different. This is about 80 millimeters from end to end on the ducts, and this one's about the real Inductrix is about 78 millimeters. Although just upon visual inspection, the ducts looked about the same. The Eachine ducts are slightly larger, and if you feel try to twist the frame and see feel how rigid it is. I think there's a little bit more plastic in this one. It's a slightly different design, and where things are placed underneath. Obviously, it's got a different battery compartment. The original Inductrix frame is quite floppy, as you can see here, significantly so. Well, first of all, let's just kind of go over what we get here real quick, and then we'll do some more comparisons. Obviously, you get the quad itself. You get your 150 milliamp hour battery, and this comes with a JST XH connector, which is a little bit different. Not a lot of toy quads come with that these days. Most of them come either the micro low C or the 1.25 millimeter pitched one. Get your 4 spare propellers and your USB charging cable and a toy style transmitter that's not much larger than the quad itself. So there's been a lot of talk about this transmitter and how flyable it is, and is some debate as to whether this is practically all that useful. And I can just tell, I haven't actually flown it yet. I just unboxed this. The springs on these gimbals are quite stiff, so my expectations are a little bit low at the moment in terms of flyability on the toy transmitter. However, I believe the people at Deviation TX are working on a way to fly this using the Tyrannus module that I got from Gobish on RC Groups, and I haven't confirmed it yet, but I've been told that he's currently working on that, so hopefully I'll be able to fly this on my Tyrannus pretty soon. I already know that some people that have this are already flying it with their Devo 7, so shouldn't be too long before the Tyrannus module is out. Okay, so let's see, let's get this canopy off of here. And this canopy is not like the one that comes on the Inductrix. It's quite rigid, whereas the one on the Inductrix is basically like a piece of film. This is a little bit thicker, and it definitely feels heavier. So won't be using this probably. Put that to the side. Can take a look at these two guys right next to each other. Obviously the boards are a different shape. You got a square one here, tilted 45 degrees on the Inductrix, and a longer PCB here. Not sure that the board's really interchangeable. Probably not based on their shape. However, I do see that you have these screw holes here and one here, so it's possible. I know that there's a new flight controller that's coming out for this frame. It's called the B-Brain. That's going to be Betaflight, Clean Flight compatible, and will allow for full acro flights and tuning and such like that. But I haven't seen that board yet. I don't know what the dimensions are, but if this should fit in here, then I'm wondering what these dimensions are. Let me just get a measurement. Just curious. Let's see, what is the measurement of this? So that's about 25.2 center of the screw to center of the screw. Here. looks like it's the same. So it's possible that the new board that's coming up may fit this frame if anyone is interested in perhaps replacing the flight controller completely with the new ones coming out. So I will be on the lookout for that and possibly get one of those and see if this frame will take that board, because then you can just buy the frame, which is like $2 on Banggood. This is crazy cheap, and then put that flight controller in here and use the frame as your platform to fly. I believe that one will be like Free Sky and Spectrum and all that, so you can use your hobby grade transmitters for that. So I'll have to be on the lookout for that for you guys. Okay, so I'm gonna pull this antenna off to the side. It's kind of interesting that it's bent here on the end, which is usually not good for range because you want this thing to be straight. And it's just like the one on the Inductrix. It's just soldered onto the main board itself. This thing has been really beat up. I can see that you got the motors are directly soldered on here versus on the Inductrix you're using these JST connectors. So if you're looking for 6mm motors that come with these guys, you probably need to do some soldering if you want to upgrade these motors. I'll have to see how powerful the stock motors are. I've heard that they're not the greatest, so I'm not too optimistic about those, but we'll find out. What else we got here? There's nothing of too much interest in this side, and can't see too much over here. Okay, so I see right there through the little hole that there are some programming pads. You can see the numbers are 2, 4, 1, and 3. That looks like that could be potentially for upgrading the firmware. Maybe someone will come up with some acro firmware for this board, like the Eachine H8 Mini. And there's that XH connector. I don't have any other batteries that have this connector, so I may have to mod this over here on the top to use the 1.25mm E-Flight connector instead, or maybe I'll use one of my micro low-C batteries. If it'll carry a heavy one, we'll have to see if it's got enough power for that. Okay, let's do a weight comparison with the canopies off. Inductrix comes in at 14.9 grams approximately, and Eachine comes in at about a gram, about maybe 0.8 of a gram more, 15.7, so just a touch heavier. So, the thing that everyone wants to know is, how does this fly, the Eachine, compared to the Inductrix when you're carrying the camera on board? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and do all the same mods that I did to the Inductrix to basically tiny whip this, so that I can get a camera on here and do some FPV with this, and so that we can see how it flies for real. So let's get some of that video up here now. Okay, so here's the first part of the mod, and I've attached this connector here on this side, which goes to the camera, and I've got another one on this side that's going to be going to the battery. And I've featured these connectors on my channel many times before on my micro builds. They're the 1.25mm pitch JST connectors, and I got these off of eBay. You can get like a pack of 20 for like $5, or maybe a pack of 40, I forget. Anyway, just solder them on here to where the battery lead is. Positive is, I guess if that's forward over here and that's the back, then that would be the left side. Let's see, yeah, so that would be the left side. And that way that I can use the stock battery if I want to, or I can use the tiny whip batteries. These are the MyLipo 205 milliamp hour batteries. So I'll have a choice between that or the other one. Now the Mounting the camera is going to be interesting because I noticed that there's a crystal here next to the CPU, and because of that, probably going to have to put some foam tape on either side and sort of maybe build up a couple layers and then put one big layer on top, and then I'm of course going to use my dual lock and maybe like a little rubber band to hold that in place. For the battery, I sliced a little slot here so that I can slide my battery in here. It's going to stick out of the front over here, and then that little tab is going to hold that battery in place using some pressure. So let me finish up the rest of these mods and I'll be right back. Okay, so now the Eachine E010 is tiny whooped. So let me show you all the mods here. It's just a couple layers of double-sided foam tape there on the bottom, and just left a gap there where the little crystal was, and then put a layer of dual lock on top of that, which corresponds to the dual lock that is on the underside of the FX798T, which is right here. Just wrap the little connector around the antenna here, and it goes to the corresponding connector here where the power goes, and then I'm going to run my battery lead underneath to the MyLipo 205 milliamp hour battery. Just have that slid in here, and let me see if I can get that to show up here. You can see where that cutout is, and it's kind of bent up, and that holds the battery in place. Even though it is at an angle, it's quite secure, not going to come out. Okay, let's get a quick weight measurement here. This is without the battery, but with all of the FPV gear, and we're coming in at a little over 21 grams, 21.34. It's kind of fluctuating around there. It's around 21.4 grams. Yeah, so these modifications are fairly simple and pretty much along the same lines as modifying the original Inductrix to make it into a tiny whoop, with the minor exceptions of the battery compartment being a little bit different, so you just have to mod that. And this connector here will fit this battery just fine, and so you can either use this one or the stock one, which is still on there. I did take that off, and everything else should be the same. Obviously we'll have to figure out what the experience is like with this controller, but I'll probably have some more videos on this, especially on not using the toy controller but using my Tyrannus with my toy module. So hopefully I'll get that running for this guy, and I'll have I'll have some more videos later on this flying with the Tyrannus, hopefully. Let me know if you have any questions about how to make these modifications to turn your Eachine E010 into a tiny whoop, and I'll go ahead and I'll roll some flight video for you right now. Okay, so that was just some quick flight video. I just wanted to get that in for this video, and I'll have some more later. And I wanted to give you some of my thoughts on the flight characteristics indoors. The flight characteristics are pretty similar to the Tiny Whoop, the Inductrix. Fairly controllable, especially on the low rates. You can kind of creep around, and of course bump into stuff, no problem. Outdoors is pretty tough. It has the same sort of issues as the Tiny Whoop in the wind. As soon as I flew it out of the garage, the wind would just take it to wherever it wanted to go, and these motors also have the same problem as the original stock motors on the Inductrix. They're just a little bit too anemic, not enough power. So gonna see about maybe upgrading these motors to something a little bit more powerful, and see if that improves the performance, just like they did for the original Inductrix. Probably would expect the same sort of results, because pretty much everything else is the same, just a bit heavier. I probably could have taken the case off and saved a gram. Might have made a little bit of a difference in the wind. The controller here is actually not that bad. I expected it to be quite difficult, but it's fairly manageable. It is a little bit touchy on the yaw, and especially since I'm a thumb controller, it's not as bad as someone who does the pinching. I just can't imagine anyone that does pinching would be able to fly this with this toy controller. So that's just my thoughts on that. But my ultimate goal is to fly this with the Tyrannus, and hopefully I'll have a video on that pretty soon. Anyway guys, that's the end of this video. I'm going to have lots more videos on this, and mods and other things are coming up, so stay tuned to my channel for that, and I'll talk to you guys in the next video.